Hi, I'm Paul Glumaz, and today is the 17th of September 2018, and I've been active with LaRouche for most of my life, the LaRouche movement. And today, I have spectacular developments that have happened. But before I go into those spectacular developments, I want to give you a context of why this is so significant, what I'm going to tell you after I give you the context. We are at a turning point in world history. A new system has emerged, centered around China's Belt and Road, centered around the concept of mutual beneficial economic development, centered around the concept of a shared future where all nations cooperate. Already we have the beginnings of a discussion of a new agreement among nations for a new financial architecture. What's missing is the United States. And the world is right now watching to see if Donald Trump can break the power of the British over the United States. Can Donald Trump break the British? So everyone in the world is watching 40-some days from now the midterm elections. I mean, the entire world is riveted on the midterm elections. And will Donald Trump survive? Will Donald Trump break the power of the British Empire over the United States? Because if he does, then everything and anything is possible. We could have a very beautiful future. The humanity could have a very beautiful future. We don't have to have a nuclear war. We don't have to get completely wiped out in a financial collapse. We have science, we have technology, and cooperation among nations could unleash the level of productivity and optimism in the world that we had after World War II, we had with Kennedy, we had with FDR, but on a global scale. This is huge. We're at that turning point. And everything hinges on the situation internally in the United States, but also how it plays out internationally. Now, the British are determined to get the United States to attack into a confrontation, military confrontation with Russia over Syria. There's been massive exposés by the Russians and others, and the LaRouche movement is mobilizing right now to stop another fake or false flag chemical warfare situation in Syria. This time it would be in the province of Idlib. However, the resistance inside the Trump administration is Bolton, it is Pence, it is Nikki Haley, it is the neocons, and they have surrounded Trump. And the LaRouche movement had a conference in New York, and this very significant conference on the end of 500 years of colonialism and the beginning of a shared future of humanity. And in that conference, there were four presenters. One was Helga Zepp LaRouche in person. The other was the deputy UN ambassador from Russia in person. The third was Virginia State Senator Richard Black. And the fourth was a close friend of Donald Trump, Roger Stone. And what you learn from all of this is that there is a fight going on inside the U.S. State Senator Richard Black was in Syria. He has the best grasp of any American on the situation, how we got there, who Assad really is, what the situation is. And he is somebody who was close to General Jim Flynn. And Jim Flynn, when Jim Flynn was no longer the national security advisor, then essentially Donald Trump was on his own. Now, Roger Stone presentation and the questions that followed were very interesting. He compared Donald Trump to Ronald Reagan, who he had worked for. That Ronald Reagan was a complete outsider, just like Donald Trump was. But when Ronald Reagan won the election, won the nomination and then won the election, he was surrounded by people who didn't vote for him, didn't like him, didn't want what he represented, and did not support him. And he said the same thing is true with Donald Trump. And what I realized is that Roger Stone, who's been a friend of Donald Trump for 40 years and who's been encouraging him to run for president for 30 years, is right now facing a massive assault from Robert Mueller and the Justice Department. Why? Because he's an outsider. He's not part of the system. And if he has any influence on Donald Trump, it's not in the interest of the power that has been running things. So they're targeting the people who might have a conversation with Donald Trump that would give them a different point of view. This is the reason why Lyndon LaRouche was targeted, because he had become very influential in the Reagan administration, such that they had to destroy Lyndon LaRouche, so to prevent him from continuing to have an influence in the Reagan administration, so that they could surround Ronald Reagan. And when the Soviet Union rejected Reagan's offer for mutually assured survival, which was the SDI, then Ronald Reagan became isolated, because and so the same thing is going on with Donald Trump. They're trying to prevent Donald Trump from having a relationship with Russia, so they can keep him boxed in. They can keep him in a confrontation with Russia. And that confrontation was headed towards a military conflict in Syria, centered around a fake chemical or false flag chemical weapons that was projected in Syria. The Russians were already, giving evidence of the filming and all of that, and Nikki Haley and the U.S. media and Bolton were basically saying that, Assad has already decided that he's going to gas his people, because he's going to go in and wants to use gas, and that, he's more afraid of the terrorists than he is of the opprobrium for gassing his people, right? So all of this was built up. This is all being built up, and then Donald Trump issued a tweet to the effect that, that Assad better not harm civilians in Idlib province, going in to clean out the terrorists. Well, today, Putin, the evil Putin, the Putin who is controlling our country and controlling the Senate, that evil, conniving dictator, the wealthiest man in the world, all of this, crap, right? Well, he is a brilliant, strategic tactician. And what he did today in his press conference with the Turkish President Erdogan is they signed an agreement which the Syrian government is going along with, which establishes a ceasefire in the Idlib province and what they call what do they call it when when you have a buffer zone, a demilitarized zone. To establish a demilitarized zone between the Syrian and their allied positions and the terrorists. And the demilitarized zone is something like 15 20 kilometers, something like that. And the terrorists will stay in their area. They will not be attacked by the Syrians. It's in effect a ceasefire. The Syrian troops will not, if everything will be in its, stand in its place. And the demilitarized zone will be policed by Turkish and Russian troops. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So the Syrians can't attack the terrorists. The terrorists can't attack the Syrians. The Syrians are in their place. And the Russians and the Turks take over the main artery, the main roads. They police the main roads. Now stuff can move out, can move in, can move out. And they have control over what goes in. They have control over what goes out. The terrorists can stay where they are. They can be supplied with supplies. And it's brilliant. So are they going to accuse Syria of a chemical attack under those circumstances when they're not even engaging the terrorists? Number one. Number two, if these guys are really the hardest of the hardcore of the terrorists, you don't want to fight them anyhow, because you're going to take a lot of casualties, because you're going to fight to the death, right? Plus of the civilians, right, that are involved. So they're just going to sit there. They can't leave and go to another part of the world and start other, like there's a whole bunch of Uyghur terrorists from Xinjiang, from Western China, Muslims, who would go back and cause a lot of problems in China. The Chinese don't want them. There's a lot of Americans there. Do the Americans want these people? There's a lot of Brits especially, and all these other people. You want these hardened terrorists to come into your country? Well, they can stay where they are, right? Meanwhile, you don't have a refugee problem being created. And then you create a situation where Syrians can come back to the country, and a political process towards creating a constitution is also being set up. A new constitution is being discussed, and they're opening it up for all these other forces to have input into a new constitution. This is what Putin was saying today. So the whole process is coming. So effectively, the war is over, unless the U.S. And sure enough, as soon as this happened, Israel started attacking attacking the positions, Syrian positions, and the French began bombarding. Not the U.S., not the British, but the French. And a Russian surveillance craft fell out of radar. And that's all recent. But it's all in relationship to the fact that this is an incredible, brilliant, strategic stroke of genius of setting up this situation with Turkey. The Turks have their friendly terrorists, their groups that they were supporting inside Syria. Well, they can bring them out, or they can work with them, or they can still control them, or whatever. They can bring them into the Syrian process. The Turks can have a little bit of a say in Syria, and it was the U.S. which was building up the Kurdish independence movement in the northeast. I mean, in the northwest area. So now you have Russia, Syria, and Turkey, and other forces agreed that they're not going to let the Kurdish independence movement, the YPG, run things up there. So this is also part of the deal. This is incredible. This is an incredible deal. This is an incredible agreement. And if you saw the video of the 16-minute press conference, it's very clear. You had all the top officials of Turkey there, all the top officials of Russia there, the top military, foreign secretary, foreign minister, everything was there. And this is huge. So what is Nikki Haley going to say? Assad is a criminal, and he needs to be removed, and he better not, and if they do chemical weapons, we're going to attack. Well, how are you going to have a false flag under these circumstances? I wouldn't put it past them to have a false flag, but how are you going to have a false flag under these circumstances? So, good question. So this is going to freak everybody out. This is going to shake up the entire situation, because they were counting on this confrontation to take out Trump by getting him to go so far into an attack in that area as to trigger cross the line with Russia. Well, there's no reason for the U.S. to attack, because there's no chemical weapons. Or who are the Syrians going to attack? They're not engaged in any more war. There's going to be a ceasefire. I mean, I'm not saying it's all worked out, but there's going to be a ceasefire. There's going to be a demilitarized zone, unless something happens or unless something comes in to destroy it. So this is huge. This is enormous. This completely takes the sails out of the neocon winds, you know, out of the neocon sails. It's amazing. And it also further begins to integrate Turkey into the Belt and Road, and hopefully the rest of the Middle East. So there's this is huge. Now, the new system is emerging. You have the heads of state of Africa meeting on the development of Africa in Beijing, and then a week ago you had the Far East Economic Forum in Vladivostok. 6,000 delegates were there. Putin meet with Xi. Xi met with Abe. Abe met with Putin. They all met with Moon of South Korea, and they're going to turn that. And then Kim sent a delegate, and it's all about economics. It's all about the massive development of the resources of Siberia and Eastern Russia. You know, everybody gets a piece of that. Everybody gets to have those access to those resources and work out the deals for that. And then Putin proposed a rail tunnel underneath between the Sakhalin Island and Hokkaido, which would ultimately connect that whole area to Japan. This is huge. This is going on. So, this is the new system coming into being, and the neocons are being boxed in. This whole thing with Turkey is going to box in the neocons. At the same time, today it was announced that Trump has given an order for a complete declassification without redaction of all of the text messages and messages between Comey, what's his name, the number 2 guy, McCabe, Lisa, Page, Strzok, Bruce Orr, etc. And it's very damning, and this is all coming out now. So this is huge. Meanwhile, they're trying to derail the nomination of Kavanaugh. So this woman writes this letter, and it comes out, and this was supposedly an assault on her when they weren't even legally of age, you know, 17 or whatever years old, 16, 17 years old at a party. So this is now going to hold up the Kavanaugh nomination, something he did 30 some years ago, or alleged to have done, which he's denying. I mean, how bottom of the barrel do you have to go? I mean, that's going pretty deep into the barrel. And you got these Republicans like flaking off, and you know, who's an opponent of Trump, trying to tie it up. So you have these kind of things going on. You have these little, games being played. However, no one can know what the population is actually going to do in the election. There's 20 to 25% of the population actually believes Putin is running the Senate and the presidency of the United States. The only thing that's bigger than that is the belief that aliens are running the United States. So you have your choice: Putin is running the United States, or aliens are running the United States. So a lot of people think aliens are running things. So it's about on the same par. Maybe the alien one had more validity to it than the Putin is running the world. So anyhow, although he is brilliant, I will say this thing he did with they did in Syria is absolutely brilliant. So so you have a situation in the United States, and there is a significant expansion going on in the U.S. economy, but it can only go so far, because we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the means to really expand the U.S. economy. But we're basically using up or expanding the activity within the context of what we already had, what was already there. So in the deliberations with Roger Stone at the conference, the situation is going to come to a head, and Mueller is very active right now. He's got a deal going with Manafort. So this Mueller thing isn't going away at all, and they're targeting the people. They're targeting all the people that have been close to Trump, who are not part of the institution, not part on the inside, and that's what they did with. That's why they went after LaRouche, and so we're coming into the election, and it's very unclear how this is going to go. But Trump is out there campaigning, and the world is watching, and we're intervening in a very major way with the Keisha Rogers campaign in Houston, and she's running against Al Green, who in a speech recently said, we don't need to have any crimes, we don't need to have any infractions to impeach a president. He is a menace. He has to, he has to be impeached. Period. In other words, it's political. It has nothing to do with high crimes and misdemeanors. It's whatever we want to do is whatever whatever we can do. You don't need to have a pretext. So he's kind of losing it, and her campaign is growing, and but we have this situation where it's coming to a head in the midterm elections, and we have three districts here that are up for grabs. They are Republican districts that could go Democrat and could play a role in shifting the Congress to a Democratic House. And I can say this: if Trump can't break the control and he goes down, we're in World War III. We are in nuclear war, most likely. You can kiss the human race goodbye, pretty much. I hate to put it that way, but he is the only potential to bring the United States into an agreement with Russia and China and India for a new fixed exchange system, and we do have a real crisis in the financial system. We really do have a crisis in the financial system. Everybody's getting very worried right now, and nothing was resolved from 2008. It's much bigger now, and there's tremendous worries about it. And there's a lot of talk now in the U.S. about Glass-Steagall. The American bankers talking about it. That the community banks are talking about it. There's a lot of discussion now going on, because it's like they're getting worried. Okay, the Chinese are talking about a financial collapse. It won't come from China. Argentina is going into a debt default. I mean, this whole thing is really an amazing situation. And the only thing that can deal with this is to establish a four-power agreement, and you've got to have, for a new financial system, and you've got to have the United States in on it. It's absolutely crucial, and that's what the world is hoping for, and that's what we have to do now. The new system that coming in is the system that LaRouche has been organizing for. It's the system that that the movement of Lyndon LaRouche has been preparing the world for the last 40 years or so. And so this system is being born, it is growing, but it's still very vulnerable. And we're hoping that in the next few months we'll get past that vulnerability, and that Donald Trump will be able to function and create a government of individuals under him who are not opposed to him, but actually represent what he campaigned for, which was to end all these wars, to improve relations with Russia and China, bring manufacturing back to the United States, bring infrastructure to the United States. You know, no more post-industrial society, no more, you know, free trade, fair trade. Yes, the tariff thing is all very, very screwy, but there's a process going on where there's a search for an alternative, which can only come in the context of a four-power agreement and a new fixed exchange system, a new Bretton Woods, and it can only come through the expansion of the world economy. But the whole process of taking down the system of looting, fair trade, free trade looting, is in the process. So all of these things are the things that Trump has promised the American people, but cannot fully deliver because he's surrounded by his enemies. When that New York Times op-ed was printed about the resistance, no, the resistance, it's not hidden. It's right there in front of your very eyes. It's Bolton. It's Nikki Haley. It's Mike Pence. It's the Justice Department. It's the FBI. It's the CIA. He's got a massive resistance movement inside his own government. That they're surrounding him, and they're misleading him, and they're lying to him, and in every which way.